Rabbit Rabbit is the new album by Speedy Ortiz. Those are some big bunnies in the video. Here is Sadie to fill us in on what's been happening since the last record.
I mean, I put out a solo record in the pandemic, so
Right.
I think that kind of prepped me for how this would go.
Right.
I didn't get to tour on that one at all. Everything was canceled and rescheduled so many times. We just kind of gave up and worked on the next thing. But the big difference in this record from the last Speedy one is the lineup changed.
Right.
Beginning around 2018, right after the record came out, Torpverse. Audrey Z. Whiteside started playing bass on tour around that time.
Yep.
And Joey Dubeck started playing drums on tour in 2019. No interesting drama. The members they're replacing are still among my best friends. They just wanted different kinds of jobs, which is respectable and cool.
Yeah, I saw your Tiny Desk concert. You had some of your older folks.
Yeah, we did, which was really a fun treat to get to play together again. So this was the first record we'd done with this particular 4-piece lineup. And I think the time away from touring allowed us all to come back to the recording process with sort of different perspective on our instruments and playing with one another. I think it's not to say that this record wouldn't have happened without the pandemic, but certainly the time off the road changed my approach to production and to playing guitar. And I think that was true for my bandmates as well. And the forced time away, I think, made the recording process especially joyful. It's always my favorite part of the whole thing. I feel like I like touring, but it's like a means to an end to afford studio time. But this was really one of the foremost recording experiences of my life. And I think my bandmates say the same.
Okay, well, tell me more about that. What was the vibe like in the studio? How were you guys working together? And why was it different this time?
Sure. The studio we primarily worked from is called Rancho de la Luna. It's in Joshua Tree, California, and it's best known for housing the Desert Sessions, which is Queens of the Stone Age and a bunch of the fellow desert rock community.
Yeah, Josh Homme and all those guys.
Josh Homme, but also, PJ Harvey and Mark Lanigan and Billy Gibbons and Carla Azar of Autolux. I mean, just about everybody I love has showed up at a Desert Sessions in some capacity. So we knew about the studio from this legacy, and then getting to work with David Ketching, who runs the studio. And he wasn't working in a production or engineering capacity. He was just sort of the curator of the session. Right. He's just a lovely person and brought such a sweet energy to the recording process. Not to mention, he's got a tremendous assortment of gear that is all in 100% working order, which is pretty rare in studios.
Oh, really?
even the really high-end ones, he'll be like, I'd like to use this, I'd like to use your $30,000 microphone. And they're like, oh, it's not working. Needs to get repaired. Or, oh, the board's missing X amount of channels. Can't do that. That's not the case at Rancho. Everything's in perfect condition because David's sitting there tinkering all day. So we just had a ton of fun getting to use all his things and getting to learn about him and the studio. And our friend Sarah Tudson, who plays as Illuminati Hotties, came in as the engineer and co-producer. So she's one of our best friends. Getting to spend those few weeks with her was a real treat after over a year and a half of isolation. So it was just wonderful and it couldn't be replicated, and will just stand alone as one of my favorite times in the studio.
And my sense is that earlier it's kind of more of been a solo effort, or you're in the driver's seat definitely with help from others, whereas this is more of a group effort. Is that correct?
I think it's about the same as it has been, but it's a different group, so that brings out different aspects. I've always kind of been the sole songwriter, and I tend to bring stuff to my bandmates fairly elaborately demoed, and the structure doesn't tend to change once it hits the group, but individual parts will change in response to what each other is playing. And my guitar parts may change in response to the bass part Audrey wrote, based off of the drum beat that Joey wrote, based off of the guitar part Andy adapted from one that I wrote. It's like a little bit of a domino effect.
Cool.
So I would say my role hasn't really changed, but you get different things from different collaborators. And especially with this lineup, we'd been touring together for many years before we recorded. So there was a ton of time to sort of build that musical language together. So even when I was in the demoing process, I already have a good sense of what kinds of parts would Joey have fun with. Let me try to program something that he'll enjoy, or will find it an interesting challenge. And I think that kind of longevity of the friendships informed my solo approach to the demoing.
Gotcha. Now I know you have a song on it called Scabs, which is kind of inspired by some of the union stuff going on. There's the strike in Hollywood, and I think the UAW is in the middle of a strike at the moment. And
that's true.
Here in New Zealand, for some reason, they're very anti-union. A lot of people are. They seem to think it's...
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I don't know why, because I'm not. But so I'm curious as to how you came to write the song and why, and what the reaction has been.
Nihilistic greeting to a fly trap hungry for a fist. Don't talk to me, don't talk. Who do you wanna prove you're a big dog to? You turn the screw, but you're using the wrong size tool. Don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me, don't talk to me.
I wrote the song not specifically about arts labor, but it was written in the post office after hearing some of my fellow patrons just being uncool to a mail carrier who was working. And this is like a year into the pandemic, when everyone's doing the lip service of supporting essential workers, but then you step into the grocery store, the doctor's office, or the post office, and the essential workers who have to be there are absolutely not being supported by the customers, who are, feeling personally inconvenienced by the very normal fact of having to wait in a line. So it was sort of written around the hypocrisy of, on the one hand, we support essential workers, and on the other hand, like, hurry up and help me first, that I was witnessing. But I wrote it in line at the post office. And this was amid a bunch of changes to mail carriers' hours and working conditions that were being widely opposed by the mail carrier unions. So it was not like this stuff wasn't in the news. But I'm also part of UMA, United Musicians and Allied Workers, which is somewhere between a union and an advocacy group on behalf of changing compensation for musicians. I've also been a graduate student teacher, and in the US, the graduate student unions, of which I was formerly a member, have been striking and succeeding, making victories across the country. So it was sort of initially about this one thing, but became more widely about peers I see who are willing to cross a picket line for their own individual convenience, when really there should be worker solidarity across all of these struggles, because they're connected. So that was the impetus behind that song.
Yeah, I mean, you could make a case for musicians have not been properly paid or represented since they started making records, but nowadays with the streaming things and all that, it's more dire than ever for you guys. So
the compensation's very low from streaming. The compensation on the road is not always tremendous. Some venues want to take a exorbitant merch cut. There's plenty of things to fight together for, but we've also got to have the backs of other workers who are also striking for what they need. So that's sort of the gist of the song. Yep.
Now the album opens up with a song called Kim Cattrall. Why is that there? Why is that our first thing we hear?
Yes, because she rocks.
Girls are against God, but I'm not one. I spent 10,000 hours avoiding this problem, pledging allegiance to whoever I show credentials to. Not from where I came from.
I wrote the song with a different title, which I don't even remember what I had it as. But it was about just I've entered my mid-30s. I'm making better decisions for myself than when I was 25, and I don't feel the need to sit through a harmful or unkind to myself situation, whether that's work or interpersonal or whatever else, just for the sake of getting along. And that's sort of what the song is about, looking back on some of the things I've been subjected to or put up with, and vowing to do better by myself. And so when I was working on this song, Kim Cattrall had given a number of interviews about the Sex and the City reboot. And
Right.
she basically was like, for no amount of money will I return to the show. My co-stars were not kind to me. I wasn't compensated enough. And I'm just old enough that I don't have to, I know better. I don't have to do things that make me unhappy.
Right.
So I really liked her statements on that, and thought it kind of fit with the sentiment of the song. So
Right.
I borrowed her name.
And overall, do you think things are improving in those regards, especially for women?
Gosh, I hope so. I mean, I don't even know that that's a gendered thing.
Yeah, I don't
Certainly,
know.
we get socialized to accept more things for the sake of politeness, but
Right.
I hope everybody makes better choices for themselves as they get older, and can learn to pick the paths that are least harmful for themselves and those around them.
Right. And it's followed by a tune that's kind of about celebrating Los Angeles. I don't know how to pronounce the name of the song. So
Yeah, that's funny. It's called it's U Season 2 or USO2, depending
Okay.
on how much torrenting you do.
Falling in love with LA, where watching for quiet your enemies. Suburbs to relax with your stay. Every Friday you've been out, known to stay. If you start a sentence, another house track takes you away.
That one is kind of a similar sentiment to Scabs. It was sort of written about looking at folks I know in the entertainment industry who maybe built their early careers on stated ethics that they haven't stuck to as they've advanced along their careers. Started with DIY and punk and community values, and then become owners of their own business where they prevent their workers from unionizing or things
Right.
along those lines. And it could be that I'm giving one example, but I'm giving like 5 examples, and everybody I know, and whether they're a novelist or a journalist or a filmmaker or a director or a musician or a painter, everybody in any kind of creative industry. And I'm sure the folks in other industries know people with the exact same downward moral trajectories.
Right.
So
Well,
that's sort of what the song was about. But the reason it's LA is because I don't know if you've driven there in a while.
not in a while, but
But
I have.
drivers just love to peel out from the shopping plazas right in front of you, coming from the right.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really nice metaphor for social ruthlessness and cutting someone off when there's absolutely no reason to do so,
Yeah.
just because you can.
So do you think as a musician or an artist in general, I mean, most artists start out with a kind of idealized view of what they're doing and why they're doing it, but as it becomes a business and other things get involved, they have to make decisions along the way as to how strongly they're going to remain with those core values that they started with, especially thinking about punk rock as being one of those things. So do you think there is a timeline where you have to make a decision of what kind of artist you're going to remain?
I think people delude themselves into thinking they're continuing to live by their values, and then are just not looking out for their peers, for their community members, or maybe they think that they've paid their dues and no longer need to ensure everyone's being treated as fairly. Or I went through shit, so sorry, I'm probably not supposed to cuss on this.
You can say whatever you like.
All right, cool. I think a lot of people are deluded about how ethically they're living their lives, and it's certainly not. Everyone makes breaches in their own ethics, but I do think there's a certain ego-fed shift that can occur to entertainers, especially in positions of power, where they are, not as quick to pass around the spoils
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the folks who've helped them earn that income.
I guess it's easier when you don't have any spoils to share to say everybody gets the same, but then
That's
suddenly.
true. And my music's too weird. I guess I'll never find out.
Oh, do you think so?
I don't know.
All right. I'll let that lie.
Yeah.
But I see you made a few music videos. How involved do you get in the visualization of your weird music?
Song of the wandering idiot's our song, the criminal element left some stones unturned, their coats in my car. For every river a drawbridge, for every motion an adjective, every nickel I'm dying waterlog in my slime. How to grow up lately, I really push.
I tend to come up with a few ideas and then sort of let the director take it from there, or we'll spitball together to come up with something together. A lot of our videos have kind of sprung off from horror movies
Right.
that I've been enjoying, and I mentioned to the director, hey, this one seems like it could be a thematic fit for this song. What do you think? And then of course, a lot of music video directors come from a background of loving B movies and campy
Right.
movies, and it's a really easy vein of imagery to mine for music videos, which have to communicate a lot in like 3 minutes. So yeah, we've done a few pretty fun ones for this record, and I was just texting with Alex Ross Perry, who directed one of them, like right before I got on this call. So
Which one did he direct?
he did Ghost Rider, which
Oh, right. Okay.
we did as sort of a new, that was not a horror movie per se, even though he is a big horror buff. But that was like a new metal homage.
Right.
And the gist is that the band's new metal performance turns the whole audience into new metal fanatics.
Oh my God.
How scary.
Exactly. Well, I remember the hair metal fad of the 80s, and that was pretty
Mhm.
frightening. So yeah, something to be scared
I'm
of.
pro new metal in this
Okay, good on you. And the Ghost Rider song is preceded by a tune called Brace Lee, which when I first saw it, I thought it was about Bruce Lee. So I feel I need,
No.
I need to discuss it.
Brace thee, like yeah.
Drawn to the chain of horses and their smell of our. I'm never coming back now, but it was a nice try.
I really like to take the song that should be the obvious closer and not let it close the album.
Ah, okay.
Make it
That's interesting.
penultimate. So that
Yep.
kind of has all the makings of a last track.
Yep.
I think by an early decision in working on the demo was to make the tempo aggressively slow. I think a lot of the feelings described in that song are among the most uncomfortable and difficult to write through on the record. It's specifically about child abuse I experienced, not in very blatant terms, but
Mhm.
I mean, it's blatant to me because I wrote it, of course.
Yeah.
But I was like, I think it needs to be uncomfortably slow to sort of work through some of these, shifts in emotion and dynamics and instrumentation. And so that was sort of the intention behind putting it at this slow pace and allowing it all this space to kind of build and erupt. And I really appreciated my bandmates' contributions to this one. Our old band member, Devin McKnight, added a guitar solo that's pretty incredible. Andy, the current second guitarist, plays some really wonderful grand piano. We just had a lot of, it's a heavy song emotionally and sonically, and it was a lot of, it was an interesting puzzle to fill it out. So I really like that one and have been enjoying playing it live. My bandmate, Audrey, to spare my vocals, she's taken on all the screaming part
Nice.
at the end. So that kind of gives me a fun break, and I just get to, I'm doing kind of the quiet lower octave,
Right.
and she's just screaming her head off. And it's
Cool.
awesome to see every night. And fun.
So speaking of live shows, I think the next one you have coming up is in Washington, is it? on
Yep. Yeah, we just got home we were out for 5 weeks, and we get like a week and a half at home and then another 5 weeks out.
Yeah, yeah. And do the songs evolve in the live experience as opposed to what we hear on the record?
We did a fair amount of rehearsing prior to the tour, so I think a lot of that evolution was sort of happening as we workshopped, because it's so many tracks on each song. We each play a million overdubs. We had to kind of distill what's most important for each of us to represent, because we're not playing to backing tracks, which I kind of wanted to do, but I respect that my bandmates didn't want to. I have my other sort of pop project, so I've been like, tracks are no big deal. It's totally fine.
Yeah, everybody's kind of cool with it these days, aren't they?
Everybody's cool with it these days, but I think it lets the intricacy of the guitar really shine, that there's not all the keyboards all over it, and it lets the drum parts shine, that they're not all, doubled up with samples. So things change as we get more comfortable with them, and there's things that, I noticed Audrey doing that's a slight change, and maybe that changes my part ever so slightly, similar to the arranging process before we record. But really, it's just that we get very tight with one another, and that's a lot of fun to get in that state.
Cool. And do you get much audience interaction before and after the gigs? People
I try to we sort of take turns at merch, and I try to wait till the end of the night, just because I have some vocal cord drama. I got a cyst on my vocal cords about 6 years ago. So there's a lot of interventions I have to do to stop that from getting worse. So I do merch after we play, so that I'm not talking too much before the shows. But I have a ton of fun meeting people, especially when we've had a few all ages shows on this tour. And the best thing is when we meet, kids who are still in high school, who are saying like, your band made me start a band, or makes me want to actually practice my guitar, or things like that. I really appreciate when we get some of the younger kids out to the shows. Cool. So that's been really gratifying to get to meet some of those, new musicians who I'm sure will be playing their own pack shows in like 2 years.
Kids can do the darndest things. I had a 20-year-old yesterday up in my little studio playing a song that she's put out on an EP, and I'm constantly amazed at how sophisticated and mature and kind of just well-adjusted they seem to
they
be.
Listen to everything, they absorb it all. I'm very impressed by the young musicians we get to meet.
Cool.
And play with too.
Yep. Well, hopefully we'll get to meet you. Come to this part of the world if you get a chance.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yep. We'll see you when you come. In the meantime, thank you for doing this with me, and
of course. Thanks,
your
Marty.
record. Good luck with all the shows and the record.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Righto. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.